Here, yay. Hi, Dawn, welcome. She says it's very noisy. Okay, good to know. Okay, I've got a message. Lynn has us on Facebook now, so that's great. Maybe I'll just start now because everybody seems ready to go. And I am Liz England. I'm here as the founder of the Career Path Development Professional Learning Network in TESOL, Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages. Welcome to our opening event of our 2022-2023 series of webinars. Linda Chu, our able and wonderful colleague and friend, former student, our leadership team coordinator for our webinars, has been working hard this summer, to get us going for the coming year. Our amazing first speaker is Professor Tabitha Kidwell. She is professorial lecturer at the American University in Washington, D.C. in the United States. Tabitha is an extraordinary teacher, educator, and friend, mom, wife, hardworking TESOLer for many, many years. And she's going to bring us today a topic that is super important, extremely intensively needed for us to talk about professional development for teacher educators in this extraordinarily challenging time. I am so happy to welcome Tabitha. I'll turn this over to Linda Chu, who will make another brief comment before Tabitha gets started. Thank you all for coming. I look forward to being with you here today in this time and space, even though you're just a little box on a screen. I'm so happy to be here with you. I feel so connected with all of the people on the screen. Thank you so much. Linda, over to you.
Thank you so much, Liz. And thanks to all of you who are here, and big thanks to Tabitha for coming to present with us today. We're so excited. Tabitha has done, her research focuses on language, teacher education preparation, and also the role of culture in language teaching. She's got such a wide variety of areas of interest, and we're so happy to have her. She's conducted professional development for language teachers all over the world. And this webinar is focusing on how teacher educators develop the skills they need to successfully prepare future teachers. And as Liz said, such an important and valuable topic for us. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Tabitha.
Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. And thank you to the leadership of the TESOL Career Path Development Group, to Linda, to Liz, to Lynn and Gulia and Weiyu. I really appreciate the support you guys have given to put this webinar together. And I look forward to discussing these themes with everybody here. So I do want to say,
sorry, could I interrupt you one moment? I forgot to say that if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. And then perhaps as we go, or maybe at the end, we will address, or Tabitha will address those questions. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. And this session is going to be recorded, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we are going to have some interaction in the session. So please just know that if you are unmuting and showing your face, it will be posted later. So just be prepared for that. You also have the option always to participate in the chat or to turn your video off, whatever is most comfortable for you. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for the nice introduction. So I'm Tabitha Kidwell. I teach at American University. And this work comes out of a sort of a side project that I have had with the English language programs. which runs the English Language Specialist Program and the English Language Fellow Program. So the research I'll share is sort of co-supported by American University and by English language programs, and I'm grateful for both of their support in this work. So I'll be discussing the professional development of TESOL teacher educators. That's a term that has many varieties. So this also refers to teacher trainers, providers of professional development, mentors, facilitators of professional development, all of the people around the world that help teachers do their jobs better. All right, so in the session today, I'll be sharing some findings about the learning, development, and identity formation of TESOL teacher educators. I'll identify some possibilities for support to those people through teacher educator professional development programs. And I hope that you'll all learn some strategies that you can use to support the continued growth of teacher educators in your settings, which might be yourself and your colleagues or people that you are mentoring or supporting. All right, so to start out, I'd like everyone to please share in the chat which one or which multiple ones of these statements applies best to you. Your experience as a teacher educator, ranging from being a beginner or to being quite experienced. You can choose only one, or you can choose more than one if you feel that more than one applies to you. So Dawn says she has been a mentor to other teachers and has occasionally delivered teacher training workshops. Mohammed has developed or led training of trainers programs. All right, we have someone who's been a mentor to other teachers. Liz says she's old. We call that seasoned. She's done many of these things, including at one point never having done anything. That's important to keep in mind. We were all there once.
That's right.
Linda has been a mentor, has occasionally delivered, has frequently delivered workshops and sees teacher training as and has developed or led teacher training of trainers. Beatriz says frequently delivered workshops and has teacher training or teacher education as a core function. And Sergio says occasionally delivered teacher training workshops. So we have people kind of running the gamut of different experience levels. For me, I would say B, D, E, and F all apply to me at different times in my work throughout the year. Oh, and we have Hasum on Facebook who says frequently delivered teacher training workshops. Thank you, Lynn, for sharing those inputs from Facebook.
Oh, Hasum, hi.
All right, so it'll be good to hear as we go through the presentation from a variety of people at different levels in their careers. So I think we have a small enough group that we can do this together in the full group.
Yeah, we've got about 20 now.
Oh, do we? Okay.
Just that way.
Then let's go ahead and do this in just a short breakout room. So I'm going to ask you guys to discuss in a group of 3 to 5. What if you have experience as a teacher educator, which many of you say that you do, what training or preparation have you received to lead TESOL teacher education, teacher development, or trainer? And if you don't yet have a lot of experience as a teacher educator, what training or preparation would you hope to receive? So I'm going to put those questions in the chat so that you can see them once you go into your breakout rooms. And we'll just discuss these briefly. So about, it's 11:06 here on the East Coast of the United States now. I'll say let's discuss until just about 11:10. So just about 4 minutes to discuss with the group. Okay, and we've got breakout rooms open. If you're joining us on Facebook, feel free to share your responses in the chat together there. So I'll see you guys back here in about 5 minutes.
You're muted.
Thank you. It always gets me when you come back from the breakout room. I'm never prepared.
So
So I see some people have stayed here in the main room. I know you have probably a lot of reasons for doing that. If you're at a place that you're not able to share verbally, you can go ahead and share in the chat if you'd like. And if sometimes it's just difficult to see that invitation to a breakout room. If anybody does want to discuss these topics together in this room, please go ahead and unmute and share.
please let me know when you need to close the rooms, okay?
I will. Thank you so much. I wasn't sure who was making them. So it was you, Wei Yu.
Yes, yes.
Great. You did a wonderful job. We'll take another minute or two. All right, so thank you to Lynn, who shared Hasum's comment from Facebook about being trained on how to deliver workshops. So training on an essential skill that is definitely helpful. And Dawn says she wishes she'd received more information about how LTAs, language teaching assistants, I think, but I'm not sure, can assist training and development. Okay, so she's trying to offer that for others. Oh, language teaching associations. Yeah, so very often professional development is carried out by those associations around the world. So offering training to those associations is a great option. All right, I think we can bring the breakout rooms back. Sometimes there's a little delay as people finish up, so.
Okay, the room will close in 1 minute.
Thank you. Okay, I think everybody's back now. I'd love to hear from a couple of the rooms, just a brief summary of what you discussed. What were some of the training experiences you had received prior to leading teacher education? Damon, please go ahead.
Hi. Yes. Hi, everyone from rainy Pennsylvania at the moment. I was in a room with two other people. One was unable to, Nasrin was unable to talk, but Mohammed and I talked. It seems like neither of us have had formal teacher training. And both of us have become teacher trainers through experience and much through watching other trainers train and learning what to do and what not to do. So that's what came out in our group.
Okay, so experience and learning from others, watching others and those good models. How about another group?
May I?
Please.
Yes. I think the experience that my breakout room teammate and I shared was a little bit different. In my case, I started teaching English, and almost by accident, I started receiving some kind of teacher training. But then I decided to, by myself, I decided to take some courses, like first webinars and then formal courses and then complete programs. In his case, however, it was something like more progressive. It was more organic and systematic, I think. And he started teaching English, and then he found out that teacher training could be an option for him, and he has been working on that after receiving some training.
All
If
right,
I'm
so
not wrong.
looks like you're correct. So I think the idea of preparation of teacher educators being somewhat organic is a theme that resonates with me, at least.
In his case, yes, more. In my case, it was more like an accident.
Okay, that's also something that resonates with me, being an accident. You all of a sudden find yourself training and realize, how did I get here? So the experiences that you both just shared will be echoed in the experiences of the participants that I worked with. So we'll be able to come back to those ideas again, and I hope discuss them in a little bit more depth throughout the presentation, and especially at the end, we have some time for discussion. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start to explain my study. So the participants in the study were 20 alumni of the English Language Fellow and Specialist programs. If you're not familiar with those programs and you'd like to learn more, the information is at the top of the slide here, elprograms.org. I will say up front that a limitation of this study, and indeed a limitation of the English Language Programs office, is that it is exclusively for US citizens. So all of my participants were US citizens, and therefore cannot really be considered representative of the experiences of teacher educators around the world. That being said, I think it is a helpful group to study, and I hope that the findings of this study will transfer to other settings and will resonate with other people from other backgrounds. So all of the participants in the study had participated in a pilot training of trainers course in summer 2020. I was hired by English Language Programs to develop this course along with some colleagues. And the participants in this course were invited to participate in this research study. Participants were selected to try and achieve maximum variation sampling, meaning I was trying to identify participants with a range of experience levels. So it goes back to that warm-up question that we all answered. Participants range from having only occasionally delivered teacher training workshops to frequently delivering workshops, to seeing teacher training as a core function of their work, to kind of all of the above. And the participants had themselves developed or led training of trainers programs. So I tried to identify participants with a range of teacher training experiences. Once I looked more closely at the prior experiences of the participants who were selected, I saw that they all had prior experience leading teacher training. 5 of them had gained that experience through their participation in the English Language Fellow Program, which is a 10-month fellowship that places US citizens in with host institutions around the world, and quite often includes teacher training in their responsibilities. And 15 of them had had their first experiences leading teacher training prior to the fellow or specialist program. So they began to develop that expertise through other experiences over the course of their career. The methods of the study, it was an interview study. So I conducted semi-structured interviews over the fall of 2020. It was done over Zoom, as was everything in the fall of 2020, if we remember correctly. Interviews averaged about 34 minutes, so they were rather substantial for the most part. And I am currently continuing to analyze the data using the constant comparison method to look for themes and connections across the different interviews and different participants. And I continue to do that data analysis. So I hope to have some input from all of you about the validity of the themes that I'm going to share with you today. So sort of the first and the most prevalent theme that I noted in the interviews represents what I see as a foundational challenge in the preparation of teacher trainers and teacher educators. So basically, in response to this question that I asked participants, what training or preparation have you received to lead TESOL teacher education, development, or training? The same question that you all discussed in your breakout rooms or shared in the chat. I received responses like these. First, responses involving fire. It's kind of scary. It's a very strong metaphor. So trial by fire, jumping into the fire. And these are, each statement is from a different participant. So I was seeing, or I am seeing, participants with different experience levels and different backgrounds using quite similar language. I also saw figurative language involving flying, which is also something human beings should not do, something that's rather dangerous if we try to undertake. So doing it on the fly, just having to wing it. I saw statements like jump in and figure it out, kind of went with it and figured it out. A lot of what I've done is learn on the job. So kind of figuring things out as you go. Some other similar statements involve fumbling my way around and finally finding your feet, getting thrown in. So figuring things out based on your background, your education, and your on-the-job training. And then lastly, some participants directly stated, not a whole lot, had no preparation, just from straight to the classroom, being a classroom teacher, teaching language, to, okay, now I guess I'm a teacher trainer based on my experience in the classroom. In sort of a parallel pattern to what often happens with native English speakers. Oh, you speak English, you can teach English. Oh, you've taught English, you can teach teachers. May or may not be true. So on the whole, the majority of participants felt that they had not received very much training, and 16 of the 20 explicitly stated that their initial preparation had been rather minimal. The other 4 didn't identify any other substantial training, but they didn't themselves specifically say, oh, not very much. So they may have had training, but they did not mention it. That being said, many of the participants did identify opportunities for learning and professional development over the course of their career that they had drawn on to feel that they had gained qualifications as a teacher trainer. So many participants referenced on-the-job experience. So learning through trial and error, learning through putting an effort to your to prepare quality programs and then reflecting on that and growing as they gained more experience. Even better was several were able to reference some experiences that they had that also included some formal mentorship and support from more experienced teacher trainers. Many participants mentioned drawing from their own teaching experience. So, you know, as teachers, we all think about ways to effectively convey information and ways to set lesson objectives and measure students' achievement of those objectives and plan for continued growth. Those skills transfer quite well to teacher education. Many participants referenced drawing from their own teacher preparation, and they did so in 2 ways. First, in terms of the content, that they said, okay, so I've been prepared to know about education. So I know how people learn, I know how people process information. This is really important as a teacher educator as well. And then also in terms of format. So they said, oh, I thought back to my master's program, or I thought back to my CELTA program or my own teacher preparation. And I thought about what my trainers did that I liked and what my trainers did that I didn't like. And I tried to build on what I myself experienced as a trainee when I was being prepared. And then several participants also mentioned attending conferences. So especially thinking about like the TESOL International Convention, they would go to those events and attend sessions, and during sessions think about what the presenter was doing that was effective and what the presenter could do that would be a little bit different, that would be more effective, and sort of taking lessons from attending sessions at conferences. So those are all helpful sources of professional learning and growth over the course of TESOL teacher educators. But I think we still see a strong foundational challenge here. If most of this group of teacher educators is saying, I didn't really have a lot of preparation, this is a real missed opportunity for the field. And I think participant 54 explains this very well. She said, I shouldn't have to fumble my way around for a year or so to find my feet. I should have that kind of support at the beginning. So as she fumbled around for that year or so, what support were the teachers she was working with receiving? It's a real inequity to those teachers that they had this person who was supposed to be working with them, who was learning on the job. And so as a field, I think this is an area of equity, and this is a real area of opportunity that we could be offering increased support to TESOL teacher educators that would then trickle down to lead to improved outcomes for teachers, and hopefully would then lead to improved outcomes for those teachers' students. So as the interviews continued, I also discussed with the participants about what kind of preparation do they think would be helpful. And we looked, and I asked about this in terms of both the content of what training do you want to learn, what content, what topics do you want to learn more about, and also format, what forms of learning and what opportunities, what programs would be most helpful to you. So first, I'm going to discuss the content. So one area that many participants identified as having great potential to improve their teacher education is needs assessment. I'll give you guys a moment to read these quotes here, and then I'll discuss them. So participants highlighted the importance of knowing the teachers they're working with. I think this is a really important insight that very often when we think about the work of a teacher educator, we're thinking about the sort of skills and knowledge that they're conveying to the teachers they work with. So they're teaching about how to teach. Actually, what are they teaching? They are teaching people. They are teaching teachers. And so what's more important is thinking about who those teachers are and what those teachers need, rather than starting with the trainer and what they have to offer. So understanding the needs of the group, being able to size up the audience that they're working with, especially if they haven't had a lot of opportunities to engage with that audience prior to the training. Recognizing who the students are, in this case, students being teachers. Finding out where their teachers are and starting where they are. These were skills that many of the participants identified as essential to their work and areas that they wish they could continue to learn more about. The second area of content that participants identified was facilitation techniques. I'll give you guys some time to read these quotes. So here participants identified sort of the nitty gritty of what does a teacher trainer or a teacher educator actually do. So if you're in a training, if you're in a session, we want to be able to effectively facilitate discussion. We want to be able to use appropriate methods and modes of delivery. We want to be able to engage the teachers we're working with. And I really identified with this last quote, because definitely in my early experiences as a TESOL teacher educator, I was guilty of this model of here's my PowerPoint, go forth and do it. And I don't think that was very successful. So rather than that, learning how to create a space where people are learning and where people are able to use the information and where the teachers sort of take up the information themselves, or even better, share their own knowledge with each other so that they're learning from each other, is far more powerful than any PowerPoint, no matter how beautifully designed. So facilitation techniques were an area of real desire for the participants that I interviewed. In terms of content for training they wish they received, participants also identified additional strategies beyond facilitation strategies. So participant 116 and others identified being able to use class observations and feedback as a teacher training tool. So to use that observation cycle to offer support to teachers, they wanted more preparation in that area. Participant 54 specifically referenced giving feedback. So that could be in terms of an observation cycle, or it could be in terms of feedback on lesson plans, feedback on materials, feedback on classroom design, but supporting teachers through the feedback that you give them. Several participants mentioned mentoring, so being able to take on the mentor role and use that as an effective way to improve the teaching of the mentees that you work with. And then lastly, using professional learning networks and communities of practice in order to offer teacher education or teacher preparation. Several participants identified that as a real area of potential learning for them. So I think then, so I'm going to transition to now the format of ways that participants would have liked to be prepared or would hope to be prepared in the future. So one format that they identified was the possibility of having more opportunities to observe quality training. So Damon mentioned in the warm-up that he'd learned a lot through watching other trainers. And participants mentioned they really wanted more opportunities to do that. Just like teaching, often we go into our own classrooms and don't get to see each other at work, don't get to learn from each other when we're actually doing the work. Often the same thing happens with trainers. We go off and we do our work in our own compartments and maybe don't always have time to learn from each other or observe each other. That's one reason that people identified conference presentations as a way to learn from master trainers. So the opportunity to observe more quality teacher training and to see the work of those really master trainers and really experienced teacher educators was seen as a practice that had real potential. Another area of format for potential teacher training of trainer programs that participants identified were some of the quality practices from the training of trainers course. So the training of trainers course was taken by all of these participants fairly recently before this interview. So for most of them, it was the opposite of how it should be. They started growing as teacher trainers and got experiences and delivered training and facilitated professional development and taught teacher education courses. And then they took the training of trainers course once they'd already had those experiences. So they weren't able to say, oh yes, this helped me in my early career, because they'd done it out of sequence, because they were pilot participants rather than this course is now being offered to fellows going out into the field before they enter the field, which for some of them is backwards as well, because many enter the fellow program with extensive teacher training experience. But what can you do? Anyways, so they identified some of the practices from the course as potentially very influential and as best practices to use in future programs. First, they really appreciated the opportunity for participants to share their expertise with each other. So they appreciated that it was a community of practice where there were many other experienced teacher trainers, and they were actually talking about their practice and learning from each other and seeing how other people think, which is always so interesting. I always think everybody's going to think the way I do because I have thought it's the best way to think. And I've learned this is not the case. People also really appreciated having many resources and tools that they could continue to engage with and continue to learn from on their own. And then they appreciated that the course modeled best practices and modeled new techniques. In this case, because it was summer of 2020 and the course was online, everybody was thirsty at that time for good online practice. So people really appreciated the opportunity to participate in a well-designed online course, and saw that there should be, loop input in a training of trainers. So teachers or trainers should be trained in similar modes to how they would train teachers. So they're seeing some models of effective practices through the structure of the training. Okay, so to sum up and conclude the sort of content delivery portion of my presentation, there is a real need and a real potential for more structured support and more purposeful professional development for beginning teacher educators. So if we could offer more support to TESOL teacher educators and deliverers of professional development before they begin to engage in that work, their work could potentially be much more successful and much more impactful. Some areas of need and interest included needs assessment, facilitation techniques, non-traditional teacher training, so sort of outside of the classroom, outside of the workshop, and opportunities to observe quality training. In terms of the format of that training, some best practices includes opportunities for participants to share expertise, especially if we're in a situation where the teacher educators have already developed some experience and already have conducted some teacher training or teacher education. Offering resources and tools so that the learning can continue, and modeling effective training. So with that, I'd like to open it up to a wider discussion among the participants here. We don't have to discuss these questions in order. We don't have to discuss all these questions. Really, I'd like to start with what is most interesting to you, which might be how these findings relate to your own experience or your own current or future teacher education setting. I'd like to go ahead and open it up to questions or comments or suggestions.
I have a burning question, and I hope not to have us leave this session without discussing this topic. Tabitha, thank you. I love that we have evidence-based research that guides the various suggestions and forward thinking that your presentation described. Thank you so much for that. So often we just kind of say, well, this is what we think, this is my intuition. And I really appreciate that we have hard data that you've collected so carefully and laboriously over time. My question is about COVID. And I wonder if you want to elaborate about the findings, about just discuss it. I mean, is there a difference in what teacher education needs are in this new environment? And of course, we all have experience with COVID teacher education of some kind, whether we're on the receiving end of teacher education or delivering it. But it's different. And I wonder if there's any discussion around that topic. Thanks.
I think it's an important question. And I think, of course, the answer is yes. Things are different. Things have changed. We need different support. And this comes in layers. Teachers need support to better serve their students, whether they're teaching online or just teaching students who have been engaged in trauma, who have encountered trauma from COVID and from everything else that's occurring in our world these days. So we need to support those teachers. We need to support those teachers, the teacher educators supporting those teachers. So it trickles down throughout the education system. And in many ways, the whole, aspects of the education system have changed, and we all need to change with those. That being said, that's all of a very big question that is beyond the scope of my personal experience and my personal research. But if that raises any thoughts for others, I'd love to hear other perspectives as well. Certainly one area that comes to mind for me is the increased availability of events like these and opportunities to network with people around the world and learn from each other. who was it that was showing us their calendar earlier, that Mohammed has so many opportunities, so busy with different webinars and sessions and workshops. And that's a great opportunity that I think has been brought about from COVID.
Yeah.
So I know Damon's hand has been up, but Lillian's recently went up. Lillian, do you have a comment related specifically to this conversation, or is it a different question overall?
Yeah, I was just going to echo what you said, because I work with in-service teachers, and I wanted to comment that they really value now more than ever time together to, like you said in your presentation earlier, to learn from each other, because that was hard to come by. It was hard to get people together physically over the last 2 years. And so even more so, it might be a little slow in coming for them to get together, but they really desire that and appreciate it more than before.
All right, so Damon, you had your hand up. Did you have another question or comment, or has it kind of been?
Yes. First, thank you for such a great presentation. And it's great to see that somebody's really taking this on in a very professional and deliberate way, and that it will help to inform all of us in the future. You were talking in your response to Liz, you were talking about things filtering down. I think what's happening today is more things are filtering up, you know, as opposed to filtering down. And we need to start thinking that the training really comes from the bottom up. And if you really listen to your audience, they tell you what they need, what they want. And the hardest thing as a trainer is somebody says, come in and give my staff a training, or give these teachers a training, and they don't give you enough information.
Yeah.
So you're just trying to guess or whatever. And sometimes that really affects your training. So a good trainer will go in with something in mind, but ask some important questions before even beginning the training in order to confirm certain things, certain understandings. And something else that needs to be included in all of this, which I didn't see in your list of questions, is something about culture. I think there are cultural issues where you're dealing with teachers in different cultural settings and situations. And I think that as worldwide providers of training, I would encourage you to add something about that in your study. So that's
Thank you,
what I
Damon. I think that's especially important for this population, where very often these are quite multicultural individuals who've had a lot of experiences around the world and may even be dual citizens of the country where they're providing training, or countries in the region. So very often these English language fellows and specialists do have local cultural knowledge, but quite often they also do not. So quite often they enter and they have their model of, you know, US education, the US education system, and then they go somewhere like Turkey or Tajikistan or Tunisia, and that model doesn't carry over, doesn't match. So it's definitely important for this population and for many to be able to understanding of local cultural educational norms that may be more of a given when you're discussing the experiences of local teacher educators who share an educational and a cultural and a linguistic background with the teachers they're working with. That's something really important to think about. Thank you. And then I also wanted to say, about, I love the idea of trickling up, coming from the bottom. And I think that's reflected in the participants' identification of needs assessment as one of the primary areas of needed professional development. I think that that comes out of them seeing this and seeing that, no, this isn't about what I know. This is about being able to learn what teachers on the ground know and being able to engage what teachers on the ground know so they can share that knowledge with each other. So much more of a facilitation model, much more of a student-centered, meaning the teachers you're training centered on them. I see your name here is ITTA Turkey.
Yes. Well, firstly, I would like to thank you for the wonderful presentation you had. I'm joining the program from Turkey, from Ankara. And I would just wanted to say that the questions you mentioned through the presentation, the last slide, I guess the whole presentation was very close to the path I actually was going through to become a teacher trainer, because as you mentioned, I mean, apart from gaining experience and the peer observation and learning from the peer teachers, definitely some organized, let's say, as you mentioned, organic, let's say, qualification is needed to become teacher trainer. And this is what happened to me like 15 years ago by Dr. Christine Kom. That I guess you know her. She's now in Dubai. And I got the trainings with her. And then I realized that, okay, I can be a teacher trainer since I already had 15 years of teaching experience that time. And I started doing that. And I'm so happy that I just got familiar with her and passed the course and things. So this presentation just took me back 2 years ago, and just I was thinking that this is definitely a must for all teachers after certain years of teaching to have some kind of, let's say, refreshment and getting trained and learning more about let's say, education leadership and going one step up, I mean, rather than being a teacher and being a classroom teacher. And about the question Lisa mentioned, I think, as you already discussed it, Tabitha, about the needs analysis, I guess for the COVID period, the pandemic time, based on the needs analysis, I mean, students had the other types of needs because education was totally online. And then what they wanted to learn was, I mean, a bit more, let's say, not that detailed as they used to learn in classroom. So the teachers had to provide everything just briefly and effectively to the students. And then they had to learn new techniques for that, the new strategies for classroom. And teacher trainers at the same time had to get equipped, get prepared with some useful strategies and techniques teachers need to know to attend classes and teach effectively. So I think definitely the role of teacher trainers through the pandemic was had been totally different, and still it is. I mean, teacher trainers do not really necessarily need to know everything about the traditional styles of teaching, and along with that, I mean, they've got to be prepared with online platforms the teachers can use. I mean, about the online resources of materials and everything which students might need in classroom.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. You covered a lot of ground here. I do want to say I'm glad to hear that the findings of the study resonate with you. I know they resonated with me. I had a similar experience where, you know, I'd taught language for so many years and then was all of a sudden training teachers and was able to draw on that experience, and that's valuable. But I know that my early teacher training would have been much more effective if I'd received some more formal support and guidance about how to engage in quality teacher training.
I think you have another question from Khalid and Damon again.
Oh, Khalid, is your question what you've shared above in the chat, or would you like to say more?
Yeah, actually, I couldn't find the hand, so I was trying to tell you that I have a question. So, based on your research, now I want to get into the psychology of the teacher trainers. Is it a character? Is it knowledge? Is it skills? When do you become of age and call yourself? I'm not worried about what's on paper. I am really curious about the experiences that on the ground. When do you feel that you become a teacher trainer? And could that be engineered? Could that be engineered? Because as you mentioned, different countries, different challenges. We have our own challenges in this part of the world. I'm referring to Egypt particularly. We're in the process of revamping our educational system, and English is front and center of it. I can go as far as it's more important than Arabic, which is our native language. So, well, that's sometimes it is because we have things, for example, the 2030 vision. We're gonna have kids learn math and science in English rather than doing it in Arabic. And we're still far away from this bar, from this mark. So what I'm trying to get from you here is, could we engineer this? Could we jump steps? Because if we take in our time, we're not gonna get there, maybe like 20, 25 years there. Can I engineer the teacher trainer so I can take the teachers from today's level to tomorrow's? Taking in consideration themselves as teachers have difficulties in their competencies as English teachers. Could that be engineered? And what are the body of skills as opposed to body of knowledge when it comes to teacher training? Thank you.
Well, I don't know if it necessarily can be done, but I think we should try. So basically, I think teacher trainers can be prepared more effectively than they currently are, and more efforts to offer them more support as they make the transition from language teacher to language teacher educator would help them prepare teachers more effectively, which then hopefully would help those teachers teach more effectively and help their students be more successful. So I think efforts to more purposefully and more systematically prepare TESOL teacher educators. So I think as you say, sort of engineer a successful trainer are very valid and very important. And I think the field should make more efforts to offer more systematic support to teacher trainers. And then the second piece of your question is about skills and knowledge. And I think you asked in the chat, do we have a teacher training body of skills like we have a teacher training body of knowledge? I think definitely. And some of those, skills like facilitation techniques, being able to give effective feedback, being able to develop an effective mentoring relationship, being able to structure communities of practice and professional learning networks so that teachers are fostered in sharing of knowledge with each other. Those are some essential skills for a teacher trainer. And I think actually those skills might be more important than the knowledge they have. But then I would also add, I think there's a set of attitudes that teacher trainers need to have and that we need to make efforts to cultivate among teacher trainers. I think it was our colleague from Turkey who mentioned, you said something like, we should learn that teacher trainers don't need to have all the knowledge. And you said about something, but I thought, oh, just stop there. We should know teacher trainers don't need to have all the knowledge. None of us have all the knowledge, but we need to create situations, we need to create conditions where teachers can learn from each other and where teachers can support each other. And I think that's a really important attitude to develop. Very often teacher trainers feel that, okay, I must be professional. I have to share all of these wonderful teaching tips, and that can be helpful. But I think far more helpful is developing a culture where teachers are able to share their expertise with each other. So I'm glad your question kind of brought that together for me. I really appreciate the question in that respect.
Thank you for the insight.
And to add, I did a project with TESOL International Association in Uzbekistan. And I think our colleague from Tajikistan can speak to this project as well, where this engineering was attempted through a George Mason University, TESOL International, and the American Councils on International Education worked together to do a teacher training with veteran teachers, not novice teachers. And that was exactly what Tabitha was talking about before with kind of what we are older think of as meta skills, and they're not meta skills, they're not soft skills. They are real teacher training skills of helping teachers who were veteran teachers learn how to work together, giving them a time and space to do that, a requirement for the certificate that they were achieving in this program, to be together, to talk to each other. Unbelievable how powerful that was, how their attitudes changed, how their communities of practice developed and didn't. We could talk about peer discussions, learning to teach each other. They had no idea that they already had these skills, but they had not had those raised up. I don't know how to say anything. that we hadn't had a chance before this program for them to do that. This was not imperialism. It was amazing to watch these teachers in action and how quickly they were able to take on these new personalities and roles in these small groups of teachers. That really a fantastic experience. India has done something similar. We could talk about that. I don't want to take any more time. Only to say that TESOL International may be a resource for you in Egypt as you anticipate this extraordinary new curriculum that you have. Thanks.
I would also like to piggyback just for a minute on what Liz said, because we did 3-day intensive teacher training with veteran teachers, and those teachers then would go out into the field and go to the more remote areas and train teachers. And of course, 3 days is not enough. However, I think a big piece of it is confidence building. I think that, and that was true for myself also when I first started teaching and training teachers, was thinking of yourself as a teacher trainer and gaining that experience and then having the confidence to be able to do it. Thank you.
So I see Damon has his hand up again, or is that an old hand?
No, that's a new hand.
A new hand.
Thank you. I love college questions. I like Liz's response and Linda's response. Wonderful and perfect timing. The one thing I wanted to raise here was, as a trainer, now I realize I need to know the difference between whether somebody's asking me to talk about techniques and methods, or whether somebody's asking me about changing attitude. And I think that when a trainer goes in and sees that there needs to be a change of attitude, you won't do that in a 1-hour presentation or a 3-day workshop or seminar. And that the training needs to really be designed according to what is necessary. Some things take more time than others. And so those who are asking us to give the training, we need to counsel them to think about what it is they're asking and how much time we have and what kind of follow-up can be done in order to solidify the training and to help it go. I mean, the things that Linda and Liz were talking about, perfect, because there was follow-on. There was a way for people to instantly transform what they had heard into practice, and then to come back and learn from that and talk more about that, either in groups or whatever. So I think, Tabitha, as you're also talking to trainers, to talk about this, the difference between something that requires an attitude or a shift in mind versus just learning about techniques and methods. That's all.
Thank you, Damon. That's interesting. So certainly something as deep as changing an attitude or a cultural educational practice will require much more intensive reflection and discussion and engagement. And so the idea that those types of programs would need to be more sustained is really an important takeaway for me.
Yeah.
And then that also reminds me, I think that might be why some of my participants were saying, you know, facilitation techniques are helpful, but I want to know about, using observations, using mentoring, using professional learning networks, that this more traditional mode of the sage on the stage, the trainer delivering a workshop or a presentation and imparting their knowledge isn't going to work anymore. And maybe part of that is COVID. Maybe part of that is an increased acknowledgement that teachers have expertise that they themselves are building on, and that training needs to trickle up. I think that's a really important realization for the field of TESOL in general, education in general, but especially for teacher educators and deliverers of professional development.
Good point.
Can I ask a quick question?
Mhm.
Now, it seems to me that those only who have certain skills they can go and teach in many countries. I've observed many colleagues, some of them are present here, and some on Facebook. They've gone around the world maybe once or twice, teaching everywhere, teaching English in different countries, Asia, Eastern Europe, Mexico, what have you. Now, there has got to be something that in the trainer's psychology or makeup that he could do this everywhere. Something unique about the trainer. Is it the knowledge that, or their background knowledge, or is it happening from their experience traveling the world? Do they pick up certain skills? Does teaching English to different cultures or in different cultures prepare you to be a teacher trainer? Could you do that if you haven't even left the country? If you haven't even left America, or if you haven't even left
Good
your
question.
country?
That's true.
Because that's what I observed from our colleagues coming through the English program office in Egypt, or even the American embassy. The more traveling they do, the better we learn from them.
And that might be true for all of us. The more traveling we do, the better we learn from the world, and the better we can share that knowledge with each other.
Yep.
And part of that comes back to Damon's comment about culture. Kind of the more you understand about cultural diversity, the more you're not going to enter a new setting with only your cultural perspective in mind. The more you'll enter knowing that there are other cultural perspectives at play that are equally valid.
Yeah, so the culture is component here. So can I comfortably say that being multicultural or bilingual is an asset to trainers?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yes, I mean, but they will be teaching in English, not their first language.
Yeah, and most masters in TESOL programs have requirements that include various, language and cultural experiences. I think we are close to the end here, but we've got a couple. Lillian and Damon have their hands up, and then we'll probably spend maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, if that's okay. Tabitha, I know you've got a full schedule, but we should be wrapping up soon. Thanks.
Damon, I think your hand is up first, and then Lillian.
Let Lillian go first. I've talked a lot already. Let Lillian
Okay,
go.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to add on to what he said. I don't know that it's so much, I'm sure traveling makes a difference, but I think it's just the varied experiences that we bring. And when you teach in different places, in different states, in different countries, you bring that in. And of course, but I just think it kind of goes into what Tabitha was saying about what teachers bring to the table. It's because of those varied experiences that they have so much to offer. And it's different for everybody. So I agree, but I just think that's kind of like central to it.
Thank you, Lillian. I think that, and I appreciate that, because I think it's a really important point. It also comes around to my other research area, which is on cultural aspects of language teaching. But I think it's a really good point that we don't have this only by traveling. That's a very US centric perspective that, oh, well, you should go travel the world. Well, many people already live in societies that are quite multicultural and multi-ethnic and multilingual. And so that expertise is something they grow up with. And so many people around the world and in the US already have this experience engaging with, at its heart, it's engaging with people who are different from you and knowing how to do that and knowing how to teach others to do that as they encounter people from different cultural and ethnic and linguistic backgrounds in their classrooms. That's at the heart of what teachers do, and especially what language teachers do. Okay, Damon?
Yeah, I was a relo for 31 years, traveling the world, and worked with teachers in about 100 countries around the world. And I think that as I went in and out of different cultures and reacted with teachers in different venues in different ways, that it did expand my vision, my ability, my understanding. And what I learned most was to listen first, and not to put my ego in front of everything, but to stand back. As a really good trainer, you don't lead with your ego, you lead with intention. And I think that it is important for teachers who don't travel to listen to their students and listen to some of the cultural understanding and cultural ideas and things. So you can get that from the students. You don't have to travel around the world, but it really helps a lot. And Tabitha, I'm glad you're doing something looking at these cultural influences. So thank you.
And I think that's a great thought to end on, leading with listening and intention. So I'd like to just share one last screen, and that's to say thank you so much to everyone for attending. I have some acknowledgements also to my colleagues who helped me develop the Training of Trainers course, or who I developed it in collaboration with. And then of course to the course participants and the research participants. You have my email there. It's just my name @gmail. I'd be really happy to hear other perspectives, other thoughts, and other experiences if anything from this presentation has resonated with you. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you to TESOL's Career Path Development, PLN. And this has really been, I've enjoyed the session. I hope you have as well. Oh, Linda, I think you're muted if you're saying goodbye.
Yes, sorry. Yes, thank you so much, Tabitha. It's been a great presentation with lots of information and great participation. It was wonderful to hear everyone's input and point of view about training teachers. And I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. And I have one announcement before everyone leaves. I would like to let you know that we will have our next speaker coming at the end of this month on September 29th. We are going to have Dr. Mark Algren, and he will give a presentation about funding master's and doctoral studies for language teaching professionals. So we look forward to that, and please watch for the announcements on our Facebook and our TESOL page. So thanks to all of you who joined in today. We love to have all of you and generate all of this wonderful discussion. Have a great rest of your day.